My mother kept a house in rural Georgia for 51 years, and in all that time, not one roach ever crossed her kitchen floor. Not one ant ever found the sugar bowl. Not a single trail of them ever marched across her windowsill in the heat of August, the way they do in most houses down there. People on her road used to think she paid an exterminator, one of those men with the silver tank and the mask who'd come once a month and charge you for it. She never spent a dime on one, not one dime, not in 51 years. What she did instead cost less than a cup of coffee, and she learned it from her own mother during the Depression, back when a house full of bugs meant a house full of sickness, and nobody had the money for a man with a spray tank or the doctor bills that came after. I've lived by her method for 50 years of my own now, and my house has stayed just as clean of them as hers ever was. My children grew up never knowing what it was to flip on a kitchen light at midnight and see the counter scatter. Today I'm going to walk you through the whole thing, every trick she passed down to me at that yellow kitchen table, and I'll tell you the one at the very end that she called the secret nobody sells, because there's no profit in it for anybody but you. Before I go on, if you're the kind of person who still trusts the old ways of doing things, the ways that worked long before the store shelves filled up with poison in a bottle, go ahead and subscribe and tap that notification bell so the next one finds its way to you. Here's the thing most people never stop to understand, and it's the whole foundation of everything my mother did. A roach or an ant is not looking for your house. It doesn't care about you at all. It's looking for three things and three things only: water, food, and a way in. Take away even one of those, just one, and the whole invasion falls apart before it ever begins. The chemical companies would rather you never thought about it that way, because a bottle of spray has to be bought again every single month, and a habit only has to be built one time. My mother used to say the man with the spray tank is selling you the same sunrise every morning. You only ever need to buy it once, she'd say, if you buy it right the first time. So let me start where she started, and we'll work our way down to that last secret together. The first thing she did before any powder and before any trap was go looking for the water. A roach can live a whole month without a crumb of food, but it will die inside of a week without water. That's its weakness, and she knew it better than any scientist in a white coat. So once every season, spring, summer, fall, and winter, she got down and walked her whole house on her hands and knees with a dry rag, feeling under every pipe with her bare fingers, behind the toilet tank, up under the kitchen sink where the trap sweats through a long Georgia summer, and along the baseboard by the washing machine where the hose runs. Anywhere the wood felt the least bit damp, that was an open door as far as she was concerned. She'd dry it right then, fix the drip herself with a wrench if she could, and set a folded paper towel down under it to tell her if the wetness came creeping back. No bug is going to build a home in a place where it can't take a drink. That one habit alone, she always said, did more for her than any poison ever sold in a store. The second thing was the drains. Every single night before bed, she wiped the kitchen sink bone dry with the dish towel, and then she poured a full kettle of near-boiling water straight down the drain, followed by a heaping spoonful of plain baking soda and a good splash of white vinegar. She'd let it foam and work while she turned off the lights. The drain, you see, is the highway. It's dark, it's wet, and it runs straight down into the walls of your house where you can't see a thing. Most people scrub the counter till it shines and leave the drain sitting there like a little swamp. My mother kept hers dry and clean as a whistle, and she said a clean drain at night is worth more than a locked front door, because that door is not how they're getting in. Once a week, she'd take an old toothbrush she kept just for the job and scrub down around the rim and the stopper where the grease likes to gather, because that little ring of grime is a whole pantry to a roach that comes crawling up out of the pipe in the dark of night while you're sleeping. She did the bathroom sink and the tub drained the very same way. Every drain in the house, she'd say, is a little front door of its own, and she kept every one of them shut. Now, if you've ever wondered why some houses just seem to have them, no matter how spotless the folks keep it, this next part is where it all starts to make sense. The third thing was a line of defense she drew right along the edges of every room. She kept a jar of diatomaceous earth up on the shelf, the food-grade kind, mind you, a soft white powder that's been ground down from the shells of tiny sea creatures older than anything walking the earth today. To you and me, it feels like nothing, soft as flour between the fingers. But to an insect with a hard shell, it's a whole field of broken glass. It scratches clean through that waxy coating on their bodies, and they dry right out and die. She dusted a thin line of it along the baseboards behind the stove, underneath the refrigerator, and across the back of every low cabinet where the light never reached. Never a heap of it. Just the faintest whisper, right where a hand or a foot would never happen to touch. One single jar lasted her 3 or 4 years and cost about what a loaf of bread does. The one thing she was firm about was reapplying it after she mopped, because the moment it gets wet, it stops working. And that's the exact mistake most folks make without ever knowing it. The fourth thing was the cracks. A roach can flatten its whole body down and slip through a gap no wider than the edge of a dime. So every fall, right before the first cold snap drove them all indoors looking for shelter, she walked the whole outside of the house with a tube of caulk in her hand and sealed up every crack she could lay eyes on. Around the water pipes, where they pushed through into the wall, around the dryer vent, along the bottom row of the siding, and around every single window frame. She used to say, "You can kill 1,000 bugs inside your kitchen and feel like a champion. But if the wall behind them is full of holes, there's another 1,000 standing in line right behind them waiting their turn. Seal the wall," she said, "and the line quits moving." And she didn't stop at the outside walls either. She sealed the little gaps up under the kitchen cabinets, the spot where the countertop meets the wall, and even the tiny opening around the light switch plates, because a roach will use any one of those as a hallway between the inside of your wall and the inside of your kitchen. A dab of caulk in the right spot, she used to say, is the cheapest and the most permanent trap you will ever set in your life, because it never needs resetting and it never runs out. The fifth thing was the one her own mother had sworn by all the way back in the 30s, and the best part is it costs you nothing at all. Bay leaves, plain whole-dried bay leaves, the very same kind you drop into a pot of soup on a Sunday. She tucked them into the corners of the pantry, dropped a couple right into the flour bin, laid one in the silverware drawer, and lined the shelf where she kept the sugar and the cornmeal. Ants and roaches simply cannot abide the oil that's in that leaf. It scrambles the trail they follow, because an ant doesn't wander around your kitchen at random. No, it walks a scent line laid down by the one that came just before it, nose to tail, like a little parade. And a bay leaf breaks that line clean in two. She'd swap them out for fresh ones every couple of months when the smell had faded off. A $1 box of bay leaves guarded her whole pantry for a full year. Now, here's where I want to slow down and talk to you about the ant specifically, because an ant is a different animal altogether from a roach. And most people fight them the wrong way from the very first step. When you see that one lone ant strolling across your counter, understand that you have already lost the first battle, because that one ant has already been home and told the whole family where the food is, what most folks do is wipe it away with a dry cloth and feel like they've settled the matter. But wiping it away dry does absolutely nothing because the scent trail is still sitting right there, painted invisible across your countertop, a great big road sign pointing every last ant in that colony straight toward your kitchen. My mother wiped every ant trail she found with a rag soaked in white vinegar and water, mixed half and half. The vinegar dissolves that trail and wipes the road clean off the map. She kept a little spray bottle of it under the sink her entire life and reached for it every single day. And she'd tell you flat out that one spray bottle did more against ants than any trap she ever saw a store try to sell her. But erasing the trail only sends them off hunting for another way in, so to truly end it, you have to reach the colony itself, down where it lives. And here is the trick her mother carried up out of the Depression. You mix a spoonful of borax together with a spoonful of plain sugar and just enough warm water to work it into a paste, and you set it out on a scrap of cardboard right where you've watched the ants travel, but well away from where any child or any pet could ever get to it. The sugar is what draws them in close, but it's the borax they carry back home on their bodies and in their mouths all the way down into the nest, and there it ends the whole colony at its very source over the span of a few days. You have to be patient with it. In fact, you'll see more ants for a day or two, not fewer. And that right there is the sign it's working, because they're feeding on it and hauling it down below. Don't you dare kill those ants. Those are your delivery drivers, and they're doing the job for you. If you're getting something out of all this, do me one small kindness and leave a like on the video before you go on. It's free, it takes you all of 1 second, and it helps an old-fashioned little channel like this one reach the folks who'd otherwise never stumble across it. The sixth thing was the trash, and this one is far simpler than most people make it out to be. She never once let the kitchen garbage sit overnight with anything sweet or greasy down in it. The can had a good tight lid on it. She rinsed the whole thing out with vinegar water once a week, and she kept it dry as could be. A roach does not need a feast laid out for it. A single greasy fingerprint smeared on the outside of a trash can is a full sit-down meal to something that small and that hungry. She kept that can just as clean on the outside as she did on the inside, and she never once had them swarming around it, the way you'll see in some houses come summertime. The seventh thing was the cardboard, and this one surprises just about everybody I tell it to. Roaches love cardboard. They truly do. They eat the glue that holds it together. They lay their little eggs down inside the hollow flutes of it, and grocery boxes and shipping boxes will carry them right into your house from the store without you ever suspecting a thing. My mother never in her life let a cardboard box spend the night sitting in her kitchen. She'd unpack the groceries the minute she got home, break that box down flat, and march it straight out to the bin. The box you carry home from the store, she used to warn me, might already have a whole family living inside it. Bring the food on in, she'd say, and leave the box outside where it belongs. The eighth thing was the standing water she couldn't always see at a glance. The little tray under the potted plants on the windowsill, the dish underneath the refrigerator that catches the defrost water, the dog's water bowl left sitting full all night long on the floor. She emptied the plant trays, she checked the drip pan behind the icebox twice a year without fail, and she lifted that pet bowl up off the floor every single night before bed. Every last one of those is a private little pond, as far as a thirsty insect is concerned, and drying them all up doesn't cost you 1 red cent. The ninth thing was the peppermint, and this is one I still lean on in every single room of my own house to this very day. Peppermint oil, just a few drops of it worked into a plain cotton ball, tucked in behind the stove, up under the sink, and along every windowsill in the house. Insects breathe through their bodies, not through a nose like ours, and that sharp, cold menthol smell just overwhelms them and drives them right back out the very way they came in. It costs next to nothing. It makes your whole house smell fresh and clean besides. And as a bonus, it turns away spiders and even mice. She'd freshen up the cotton balls once a week or so. A single small bottle of the oil lasted her the better part of a year. Now we're coming down to the last one, and this is the one my mother called the secret nobody sells, because there is no bottle you can pour it into, and there is no man alive who turns a profit by telling it to you. The last thing wasn't a product at all. It wasn't a powder or a spray or a trap. It was a rhythm. Every single night of her life, the very last thing she did before she reached up and turned off that kitchen light was leave the kitchen behind her with no water standing anywhere, no crumb on the floor, no dish soaking in the sink, and no food left sitting uncovered on the counter. 10 minutes every night without one single exception for 51 years running. She said a bug will forgive you a messy afternoon easily enough, but it moves right in on a messy night. The daytime kitchen, she'd tell me, is a battlefield, but the nighttime kitchen is real estate. And if you close it up clean every single night, then you are simply never for sale. That's the whole secret when you strip it all down. Not a poison, not a trap, not one more thing you have to go and buy again next month. Just a house that offers them nothing at all, closed up, tight, night after night after night. That right there is why the chemical aisle at the store keeps getting longer while the bugs keep marching right back in for the very people who shop it. A spray kills whatever happens to be in front of you today and does nothing whatsoever about tomorrow. My mother's way doesn't bother killing the bug on your counter. It makes good and sure that bug never has a single reason to climb up onto your counter in the first place. One of those is a war you fight every month for the rest of your natural life, spending money and breathing chemicals the whole way down. The other is a habit you build one time and simply keep, and it costs you nothing but a little care and attention. I know which one my mother chose, and I know which one I've chosen every day of the 50 years since. My mother passed a few years back now, well up into her 90s, in that same Georgia kitchen where she'd taught me all of this at the table when I was a girl. And it was as clean of roaches and ants the day she left it as it had been the day she first moved in as a young bride. She never paid an exterminator a dime. She never once breathed in a cloud of poison over her own supper table. She just understood something the companies would sorely rather you forgot, which is that a house is only ever as inviting to a bug as you allow it to be. And the whole price of keeping it uninviting is a jar of white powder, a box of bay leaves, and 10 honest minutes before you go to bed. None of these tricks are complicated. Not a single one of them costs more than pocket change. The stores just wish you'd keep on reaching for that bottle instead, because the bottle is where all their money lives, and the habit, well, the habit is where yours gets to stay. If your own mother or your grandmother had a way of keeping the house clean of pests that I didn't happen to cover here today, I would truly love to read about it. So leave it down in the comments for the rest of us to share in. That's how this kind of knowledge has always traveled from one kitchen table to the next one, passed down hand to hand by the people who figured out what the establishment would never tell them and were kind enough to write it down for the ones coming along after. And if this helped you today, or maybe reminded you of someone you loved and lost, go ahead and subscribe. Tap that notification bell and leave a like so the next person can find their way here too. Thank you kindly for spending a little of your evening here with me. I'll see you in the next one.